The unthinkable just happened. The God MC himself, Rakim, has spoken, and his words have sent shockwaves across hip-hop. In a moment that nobody saw coming, Rakim, the man whose lyrical genius shaped the very foundation of rap, publicly crowned Kendrick Lamar as the future of hip-hop. Let that sink in. When Rakim speaks, it's not just commentary, it's scripture. And this divine cosign doesn't just elevate Kendrick, it delivers a deadly blow to Drake's throne. For years, Drake has been hailed as the commercial king, running the charts with hit after hit. But with Rakim stepping in and declaring Kendrick the chosen one, the balance of power just shifted. Fans, critics, and artists are all buzzing. Is this the end of Drake's dominance? Or is it the start of a new golden age? Stick around because this story is deeper than a single headline. Hip-hop has always been more than just music. It's a culture built on respect, authenticity, and the passing of the torch from one generation to the next. And when the torchbearer is Rakim, the entire game shifts. Rakim isn't just a rapper. He's the architect of lyricism. Back in the 1980s, when hip-hop was still finding its voice, Rakim revolutionized the art form. His complex rhyme patterns, internal rhymes, and poetic delivery made him a pioneer. To this day, MCs study his bars like scripture. They don't call him the God MC for nothing. His influence runs deep. Nas, Jay-Z, Eminem, J. Cole, and yes, even Kendrick Lamar all credit Rakim for raising the standard. So when Rakim opens his mouth and declares Kendrick Lamar as the future of hip-hop, it's not casual praise, it's coronation. It's validation at the highest level. It's history in the making. Rakim's legacy of authority. To understand the weight of Rakim's words, you have to rewind. This is the man who dropped Paid in Full with Eric B., a project that changed what rap could sound like. Rakim made hip-hop intellectual, poetic, layered. He proved rap wasn't just about rhyming cat with hat. It was about weaving ideas, imagery, and emotion into verses. Rakim didn't just rap, he painted. He made lyricism a standard. Without Rakim, there's no blueprint for Kendrick. Without Rakim, there's no elevation of the pen game to art form. That's why his cosign isn't just another shout-out. It's the foundation recognizing the skyscraper that grew from it. The crowning of Kendrick. So when Rakim steps forward and says Kendrick is the future, it's not random. It's decades of credibility backing one man's artistry. Think about it. Rakim rarely makes bold declarations. He's not the type to chase headlines or stir drama. His voice is quiet but monumental. So when he chooses to crown Kendrick, the world listens. This isn't fan hype. This isn't social media chatter. This is the God MC handing down the crown. And make no mistake, this isn't just an honor for Kendrick. It's a direct challenge to the so-called kings of today. The Drake factor. For years, Drake has worn the crown as the commercial juggernaut. Billboard hits, unmatched. Streaming dominance, unquestionable. Global appeal, unstoppable. Drake's run has been historic, but it's always carried one asterisk: authenticity. While Kendrick built his empire on artistry, storytelling, and cultural impact, Drake built his on catchy hooks, chart domination, and mainstream appeal. Both strategies worked. Both gave them power. But Rakim's crown doesn't care about streams. Rakim's crown doesn't care about radio hits. Rakim's crown is about artistry, about legacy, about who truly embodies the soul of hip-hop. And in his eyes, that's Kendrick. So while Drake may still rule the charts, Rakim just ruled on the culture, and he ruled against him. Fan reactions. The moment Rakim's words hit the internet, the fan base erupted. Hashtags like #KendrickCrowned and #DrakeIsFinished started trending within hours. Kendrick fans celebrated like their team had just won the Super Bowl. The God MC crowned our GOAT. Game over. Drake stans fired back, arguing charts and numbers outweigh opinions. Billboard doesn't lie. Neutral hip-hop heads. They knew what this meant. Rakim's cosign isn't about numbers, it's about truth. One viral tweet read, "When Rakim speaks, you don't argue. you listen. If he says Kendrick is the future, then the conversation is done. Hashtag respect the God Missy. Why it matters more than ever this moment isn't just about Drake versus Kendrick. It's about the future of hip-hop itself. We're living in a time where the culture is often overshadowed by algorithms, playlists, and virality. But Rakim stepping in is a reminder. Hip-hop's heartbeat has always been the lyricist, the storyteller. The truth-teller. By crowning Kendrick, Rakim is essentially saying, this is the standard. Not gimmicks, not quick hits, not TikTok dances, but artistry, integrity, depth. And that's why the hip-hop world is shook. Because when Rakim draws the line, everyone else has to measure up. Passing the torch, every generation has its moment of transition. Kool Herc birthed the culture. Rakim redefined it. Nas carried it into the golden era. Jay-Z turned it into a global business. And now, Rakim has declared Kendrick as the torchbearer for the next chapter. But here's the catch. In doing so, Rakim also declared war on Drake's throne. Because two kings can't sit on one seat. And if Kendrick is the future, what does that make Drake? For many, it makes him the past. Rakim's words weren't just praise. They were prophecy. And the prophecy says Kendrick Lamar is the one, and Drake's empire may already be cracking. Hashtag Kendrick crowned. Hashtag GodMC. Hashtag hip-hop future. At Kendrick Lamar, at Drake, at Rakim the God Mick. At Billboard, the second, Rakim's words echoed across the culture. The fallout was instant. Hip-hop isn't just music, it's a battlefield of respect. And Rakim's cosign was like dropping a nuclear bomb. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, how does Drake respond? What does this mean for his empire? And can the charts protect him when the God MC himself has spoken? Drake's silence first. Let's talk Drake. For a man who usually has a response to everything, whether in subliminals, T captions, or full-on diss tracks, his silence was deafening. No tweets, no posts, no clever one-liners slipped into a feature, nothing. And in hip-hop, silence is dangerous. Because when you don't respond, people start writing the narrative for you. Fans began questioning whether Drake even has the lyrical credibility to challenge Rakim's declaration. Some argued you can't outchart a cosign from the God MC. Others clapped back, defending their king. Drake doesn't need Rakim's validation. The numbers speak for themselves, but one truth became impossible to ignore. Rakim didn't just praise Kendrick. He cast a shadow over Drake, and until Drake steps into the light, that shadow grows bigger every day. Media frenzy, the media went wild. Hip-hop blogs, podcasts, and mainstream outlets all jumped on the story. Billboard ran with a headline, Rakim crowns Kendrick, a cultural shift beyond the charts. Complex dropped a panel discussion. Does Rakim's word mean more than Drake's numbers? Hot 97's Ebro said bluntly on air, if Rakim says Kendrick is the future, then Drake has to deal with it. Period. Everywhere you looked. The narrative was the same. Kendrick Lamar had just received the ultimate blessing, and Drake was the one left vulnerable. The culture divides, of course. Fans split into camps. The Kendrick army exploded with celebration. They flooded timelines with bars from To Pimp a Butterfly, DAMN, and Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers evidence. In their eyes, that Rakim's cosign was nothing but the truth. Meanwhile, Drake's loyalists fought back with stats, the streaming records, the sold-out tours, the endless hit singles. Their argument. Rakim's respect doesn't erase Drake's dominance. But here's the catch. The debate revealed something deeper. Drake represents commercial success. Kendrick represents cultural authenticity. And Rakim just reminded everyone which one hip-hop was built on. Kendrick's response, Kendrick being Kendrick, didn't brag or boast. No long-winded post. No diss aimed at Drake. Instead, he stayed quiet, letting Rakim's words echo without interruption, and that silence was powerful. Because it wasn't insecurity, it was confidence. Kendrick doesn't need to argue. He doesn't need to clap back. The God MC already did it for him. One fan on X put it perfectly: Drake needs to defend himself. Kendrick doesn't. That's the difference. Industry reactions behind the scenes. The industry felt the tremors. Labels started worrying about what this meant for Drake's marketability. If his cultural credibility takes a hit, does that weaken his dominance? Artists began aligning themselves more publicly with Kendrick. Cosigns, shoutouts, and subtle nods started popping up, signaling a shift in alliances. Promoters whispered about Kendrick's value skyrocketing. Rakim's words only increased demand for his shows, collabs, and appearances. The crown Rakim gave Kendrick wasn't just symbolic, it had financial weight. Why this feels different now? Let's be clear, hip-hop beef and comparisons are nothing new. We've seen Nas versus Jay-Z, Pac versus Biggie, Drake versus Meek Mill. But this moment feels different because it isn't beef, it's prophecy. Rakim didn't come forward to start drama. He spoke as a guardian of the culture. And when a guardian speaks, the effect lasts longer than any chart-topping single. This isn't about a hot summer beef. This is about legacy. Drake is finished, trends as harsh as it sounds. Drake is finished began trending across platforms. It wasn't that Drake's career was over. His numbers, money, and reach guarantee longevity. But culturally, the sentiment was shifting. For the first time in years, Drake felt vulnerable, exposed. His aura of invincibility cracked under the weight of Rakim's decree, and that's what shook fans the most. Not that Drake couldn't drop another hit, but that his hit suddenly felt smaller. A new era. Part 2 of this story isn't just fallout. It's the beginning of a new era. Rakim's crown isn't just praise for Kendrick. It's a message to the culture. This is the standard. This is the future. This is where we go from here. And that leaves Drake, and anyone else chasing numbers over authenticity, standing on shaky ground. Because in hip-hop, numbers fade, but cosigns from legends, they echo forever. Hashtag Kendrick crowned, hashtag Godmick, hashtag Drake, vs Kendrick at Kendrick Lamar, at Drake at Rakim, the Godmick. At Complex at Hot 97, if Part 2 showed us the immediate fallout, Part 3 is about the ripple effect. Because when Rakim crowned Kendrick as the future of hip-hop, it wasn't just about one man versus another. It sent shockwaves through the entire industry. Artists, labels, promoters, and even fans who never thought the balance of power could shift so quickly. Artists choose sides suddenly. Hip-hop became a battleground of alignment. Artists had to make a choice. Do they lean into Drake's dominance? Or do they step toward Kendrick's authenticity and Rakim's blessing? You saw it everywhere. Underground lyricists began dropping freestyles, shouting out Kendrick, almost as if to position themselves in his orbit. Mainstream rappers who once collaborated heavily with Drake started posting subtle nods to Kendrick. A lyric quote here, a backstage photo there. Even international artists, from London grime MCs to African rappers, began citing Kendrick as the blueprint. The message was clear. This wasn't just about who's hot. This was about who defines the culture moving forward. Labels scrambled behind the scenes. Labels went into full panic mode. Drake had long been their golden goose, the artist who guaranteed hits, streams, and crossover appeal. But Rakim's cosign shifted perception. And in the music industry, perception is everything. Suddenly, executives started asking if they were too dependent on Drake. A&R teams began scouting for the next Kendrick. Lyricists with depth, artistry, and cultural weight. Budgets shifted, with more money flowing into artists who embodied authenticity rather than just commercial appeal. It wasn't that Drake stopped making money, but the cultural currency he once had was leaking fast. And for labels, cultural currency often predicts financial returns. The younger generation, perhaps the most dramatic impact, came from the younger generation of rappers. For years, many up-and-coming artists tried to follow Drake's formula: melodic flows, catchy hooks, blending rap with pop for chart domination. But after Rakim's declaration, the blueprint shifted. Young rappers suddenly began leaning toward storytelling, raw lyricism, and social commentary. In cyphers, on TikTok freestyles, and even in SoundCloud uploads, you could feel the pivot. Kids who once said, "I want to be like Drake," were now saying, "I want to be like Kendrick." Rakim didn't just crown Kendrick. He gave an entire generation permission to value artistry over algorithms. Media reframes the narrative. Hip-hop media also flipped the script. For over a decade, headlines celebrated Drake's numbers. The streams, the Billboard records, the tour grosses. But after Rakim's crown, articles started emphasizing impact over sales. Pod. Casts debated whether lyrical weight was about to make a comeback. YouTube reactors dug deep into Kendrick's discography, breaking down bars most people missed years ago. Even mainstream outlets that usually focused on charts started asking, what makes an artist timeless? Drake, once the automatic benchmark, suddenly had to prove he was more than just Spotify statistics. The psychology of the crown here's the part that hits hardest. Rakim's crown wasn't just a cosign for Kendrick. It was a psychological blow to Drake. Think about it. For years, Drake operated from the throne of invincibility. Every time someone challenged him, he bounced back with a chart-topping hit. But when the God MC himself, the very foundation of lyrical credibility, declares Kendrick the future, it creates a narrative Drake can't easily erase. Because how do you fight against prophecy? How do you battle against history itself? Drake can outchart almost anyone, but he can't out-legacy Rakim. Kendrick's moves, meanwhile, Kendrick continued to play chess, not checkers. Instead of gloating, he let the energy build. Every show he performed, every feature he dropped, every visual he released suddenly carried more weight. Because now, audiences weren't just watching Kendrick the artist, they were watching Kendrick the anointed future of hip-hop. Rumors began swirling of new projects, possibly collaborations that would further solidify his elevated position. Fans speculated about a Kendrick plus Rakim joint performance, something that would cement this symbolic passing of the torch in real time. The culture speaks. Perhaps the most telling sign of the shift came from the people who matter most, the fans. On social media, hashtags like hashtag Kendrick crowned, hashtag future of hip-hop, and hashtag Drake is finished trended for days. TikTok edits showcased Kendrick's most legendary performances alongside Rakim's cosign. Memes flooded timelines, framing Drake as the emperor whose crown was slipping. Even casual listeners, people who didn't normally dive into the politics of hip-hop, started asking, wait, is Drake really falling off? The culture was rewriting its own story. Why this changes everything? Let's be real. Drake will always be a global superstar. His music will continue to dominate radio, playlists, and streaming. But hip-hop isn't just about popularity. It's about who defines the narrative. And Rakim just handed that pen to Kendrick. This isn't about sales. It's about soul. And in that battle, Kendrick now sits on a throne Drake can't buy, stream, or tour his way into. The build to part 4. So what happens next? Drake faces the biggest identity crisis of his career. The industry pivots toward artistry. The culture rallies behind Kendrick. And Rakim's crown sets the stage for what could be the most defining showdown in modern hip-hop history. Because if the God MC has declared the future, the only question left is, how does Drake survive it? Hashtag Rakim crown, hashtag Kendrick future, hashtag Drake finished, hashtag hip-hop shift. At Kendrick Lamar, at Drake, at Rakim the God move, seen the shockwave. We've felt the ripple effect. But now comes the real question. What's next? When Rakim crowned Kendrick as the future of hip-hop, it didn't just spark debates. It put Drake in checkmate territory. And whether he chooses to fight back or fade away will define his legacy from this point forward. Drake's dilemma. Drake is in unfamiliar territory. For over a decade, he's been untouchable, the golden boy of rap, the hitmaker who could silence critics with a single release. But Rakim's words created a challenge that Drake can't solve with streams alone. Here's his dilemma. If Drake ignores it, he looks weak. Silence can be power, but in this case, it feels like avoidance. If Drake responds lyrically, he risks playing Kendrick's game, and that's dangerous. Because Kendrick is one of the greatest lyricists alive. If Drake leans on numbers, he looks insecure, as if he's trying to buy credibility rather than earn it, no matter which path he chooses. The perception battle is already tilting against him. Could a war break out? Hip-hop thrives on battles. And let's be honest, fans are dying to see Drake and Kendrick go head-to-head in a full-on lyrical war. We've seen flashes of it in the past, subtle jabs in songs. But Rakim's crown raises the stakes to a whole new level. If Drake decides to fire back, we could be looking at the biggest battle since Jay-Z versus Nas. Except this time, the internet era would make it explode 1,000 times faster. Think about it. Diss tracks dissected bar by bar on TikTok.live, debates on X Spaces pulling in millions of listeners, entire YouTube channels dedicated to cataloging the shots. Fired, it wouldn't just be a battle. It would be a global event. Kendrick's strategy, meanwhile, Kendrick holds all the cards. He doesn't have to rush. He doesn't have to throw shade. In fact, the more Drake scrambles, the calmer Kendrick looks. His strategy: stay focused on artistry. Every verse, every performance, every visual becomes another reminder that he's operating on a higher plane. And if he decides to engage in battle, he knows he has Rakim's cosign as a shield and a sword. Kendrick isn't just an artist anymore. He's been elevated into a cultural symbol. And that's something Drake can't replicate, no matter how many records he breaks. The industry watches behind the curtain. Everyone is watching. Labels, promoters, even streaming platforms. If Drake collapses culturally, it opens the door for a new generation of rappers to fill the vacuum. If Kendrick ascends even further, his influence will reshape how labels invest in artists, prioritizing depth and substance over surface-level appeal. If a battle erupts, the entire industry cashes in. Streams spike, ticket sales boom, and attention skyrockets. But here's the twist. While the industry loves the drama, the culture is rooting for something deeper. They want to see a shift. They want to see artistry reign supreme again. Drake's vulnerability, Drake's empire, isn't collapsing overnight. He's still rich, still influential, still able to fill arenas worldwide. But the aura of invincibility, that's gone. Think about it. For years, critics accused Drake of being too safe, of chasing hits rather than pushing boundaries. Those criticisms never stuck because his dominance drowned them out. But now, with Rakim backing Kendrick, those critiques have been resurrected with force. Fans are beginning to ask, has Drake plateaued? Is his music formulaic? Can he survive in a culture that's shifting toward authenticity? And the fact that people are even asking those questions is proof that the crown is slipping. A historic moment we're witnessing history. Decades from now, people will look back at this moment as a turning point. Just like NASA's Ether, just like Tupac's Hit 'Em Up, just like Jay-Z declaring himself the best. Rakim's crown for Kendrick will live on as a defining cultural milestone. And Drake, his legacy will depend on how he handles it. Does he step up and prove the doubters wrong? Or does he fade into the role of a pop superstar, remembered more for numbers than impact? Either way, this moment has already cemented Kendrick as the chosen one. The future looking ahead, one thing is clear: the game has changed. Kendrick Lamar now carries the weight of being the anointed heir, the artist tasked with carrying hip-hop's cultural torch. And he's not alone. Rakim's cosign means that every lyricist, every storyteller, every artist prioritizing substance has just been given a green light to step forward. As for Drake, his next move will determine whether he stays a king or becomes a cautionary tale. Because Rakim didn't just crown Kendrick. He challenged the entire industry to raise its standards. Final words. So, is Drake finished? Not in the literal sense, but the Drake era of dominance, the era where his numbers silenced every critic, may have just ended. Rakim's crown was more than a compliment. It was a declaration, a line in the sand, a passing of the torch. And when the God MC speaks, the culture listens. Now, the ball is in Drake's court, and the world is watching. #Rakim crown #Kendrick future #Drake finished #hip hop history. At Kendrick Lamar, at Drake, at Rakim the Godsco. Here's the question. Fam, is this the end of Drake's reign? Or is this the beginning of the biggest battle hip-hop has ever seen? Rakim didn't just crown Kendrick, he rewrote the future of rap in one sentence, and now? The entire culture is holding its breath to see how Drake responds. Will he clap back with a legendary diss? Will he prove everyone wrong with a new sound? Or will Kendrick, with Rakim's blessings, step fully into the throne and lead hip-hop into a new era? One thing's for sure, the crown has shifted. And the next move will decide history. Don't scroll away, hit that follow, smash that subscribe, and turn on notifications because the next chapter is about to be wild. This isn't just rap beef. This is hip-hop destiny unfolding in real time. #Kendrick crowned, #ARAKIM speaks #Drake next move. Drake next move.